going out there where apocalypse roams.
What's going on, guys? It is Dex, and I am here filling in tonight for Adam again. So let's get right into it. We've got a lot to cover in a short amount of time. But get this, we have now deployed thousands, up to 3,000 U.S. sailors and Marines are headed in the Red Sea on their way to Iran, to the store. This is part of the amping up. As we mentioned last week, we said, hey, they potentially may be putting military on civilian ships. They may be doing greater things to try to deter the takeovers that have been happening from that country. But it's certainly a definite sign of escalation that we're putting over 3,000 new military personnel that are arriving in. It's part of two ships that are heading in. And they say it's a response from Washington in response to the seizures of those tankers. But the deployment adds to the growing military buildup in the Gulf waterways. And the U.S. says that the Iran country has either seized or attempted to take control of nearly 20 internationally flagged ships in the region over the past 2 years. As we have said, so by the way, just real quick, so you know, it's the USS Bataan and the Carter Hall, USS Carter Hall. I think the Bataan is an amphibious ship. It's the one you can see in the thumbnail on this show. This one right here, that is the Bataan. Or Bataan, I'm probably saying that wrong. I'm sorry, folks. But anyway, that's an amphibious ship. I think they're both significant ships that are going in. Obviously 3,000 people heading in. It's a big deal. We have said watch the Middle East. We've certainly been talking quite a bit about what's going on with the tankers and the other escalations with that country as well. But the fact that we sort of have two fronts that we're constantly focusing on, Europe and the Pacific, it makes absolute sense that advantages would be taken in a third location, which would make our own abilities stretched very thin, in my opinion. So look, we got this and we got a lot more. So let's jump into it all. I'm going to get to everything right after this. I'm glad to see everybody here tonight, and thank you for joining me. And I promise Adam is coming back. We just had the dates wrong. I apologize, but let's go right after this.
Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough.
All right, folks, welcome back. Again, it's Dex, and I am filling in for Adam. And just to clarify, you can blame me. I know I told everybody we'd be back. He'd be back on Monday, and I had my date wrong. I thought it was Monday, but it's really Tuesday. Although he may be doing something on his cell phone later if he can get the time. But he will be back. I promise you guys. Adam is not. I didn't hide him somewhere. He's not been taken. He was just taking care of some family stuff that was going on. So everything is good. And again, as I like to say, everything is just fine. So don't worry about it. If you're new here and you don't know about our website, make sure to go check out marfooglenews.com. All you have to do is click on today's thumbnail, which looks like this: deployments, Iran or bust, Gulf Watch, little emblem and mix up here of Alaska. And we'll talk about what was going on there. All of the sources, everything that I'm going to talk to you about tonight is right here on our webpage. And you can also find links to our affiliates, and you can find the overflow, which I'll explain a little bit later. So everything right here on our webpage, we put it together for you every night. And a quick way to get there, right down below in the description. Click on the show notes link. It'll take you right here. All right, let's keep going. Let's move into the rest of the news and what's happening. Lots going on. So get this. China releases a TV documentary showcasing its army's ability to attack Taiwan. This is kind of a big deal when you think about the psychological effects of something like this. So this film, it's a docuseries, a documentary, really, not a series, but it was a documentary. It was released, and it's about the Army's preparation. It showcases the soldiers pledging to give up their lives if needed as Beijing continues to ramp up its rhetoric against the self-ruled island, it says. The name of it is called Chasing Dreams. It's an 8-part docuseries. It was aired on their state broadcaster CCTV earlier this week, and it also coincided with the 96th anniversary of the PLA and what's going on there. So obviously drills, other stuff happening, but it documents and actually has multiple soldiers who talk like that statement I made earlier. They reiterate that type of messaging, but they show all the videos about what they've done, all the drills they've been doing. And it really does amp up that level of Ganda and that level of psychological type of conflict, if you want to call it that, especially to people in Taiwan that may see this as well. So this is certainly a big deal. I'm kind of curious what you think about it. It's not, we've seen I'm sure our nation has produced its fair share of documentaries or had people produce them for them, especially around military strength. Usually it's in hindsight, not necessarily in foresight and foreshadowing. But what do you think? This is a foreshadowing type event. They're putting it out in front. They want everybody to see it, and they want to know that they're prepared to take Taiwan. Do you think it's a big deal? Would you be surprised if you saw our government or our media putting together how are we going to take this or how are we going to take that in advance? It's kind of an interesting documentary. It's almost, like I said, it's foreshadowing. So let's keep talking about China, though. So get this. This was happening over the weekend, kind of a big deal, a very big deal. China and Russia, basically an armada of ships. They joined together in there was at least 11 ships, and they were right off our coast. So they brought these warships near Alaska, and it actually triggered the U.S. to actually respond in a significant way, a much more significant way. So this was a big deal, at least in the military's eyes. It's definitely a big deal. I know we talk about Alaska when there's a plane that goes by and we we scramble a couple fighters and they just follow the plane and it leaves. That's kind of normal. This is unprecedented. And matter of fact, that's what Sullivan said. So, the senator from Alaska said, this is unprecedented in terms of the size and scope of this joint naval task force, being both Russia and China working closely together. But whether you live in Alaska or you're on the East Coast, it's a very large surface action task force between our two main adversaries, so very close to our shores. Now, it's my understanding they did not cross out of international borders, which I think is about 12 miles, but they did get very close and enough that we had to scramble. So we ended up scrambling P-8 Poseidons, and we sent about we had four more of our own warships go at least start monitoring the situation. I don't know that they just immediately were able to turn and head up there. It takes a long time depending on where they were located, but they certainly made their presence known and made it known that we knew they were there. The P-8 Poseidon aircrafts were following them. So the update to this over the weekend, what's being reported now, is that those ships are now moving away. So whether it was part of their drill, which they were doing, as they called it, they were doing an exercise, a joint exercise, whether it's the end of that or it's the end of the part that was going to come near us, or did they get pushed away because we sent in our aircraft, we sent in our ships, or at least started monitoring their ships with our ships. But nonetheless, that has actually stopped. So this is not something we've really ever discussed before. We've yet to have a large number of ships, in modern times, in recent times, I should say, actually on our coast, actually right up against us. And so this is kind of a big deal. We've seen, onesie twosies. We've seen the occasional sub that might have surfaced. We've certainly seen the rumors of subs that surface in different areas that are, extreme too, and sometimes. But nonetheless, this is kind of a big deal because it's not just that that it happened, but they did it intentionally. They were running a drill and they said, we're gonna intentionally put this drill with over 11 ships right up near your border, and we're going to bring it as close as we can without necessarily crossing the line, so to speak. So both officials stressed that the 11 Russian and Chinese ships remained in international waters and did not sail into U.S. Territorial waters, which is, as I said earlier, 12 miles from the Alaskan coastline. But still, 12 miles is pretty darn close. So if you can imagine the range on those ships, I don't think 12 miles really matters all that much. And I'm sure that's why we don't want those ships that close to our borders, especially in contested areas and hot areas like Alaska, where we have a lot of equipment and a lot of monitoring, and a lot goes on up there, as it's our closest point to our adversaries. So get this. So I'm going to talk about a couple of hacking stories. And what's interesting, both of these are in the past, but they both were just revealed recently. So we didn't really know about them till now. But this one is actually ongoing, and it's kind of scary in the sense when you think about Japan. So the headline is China hacked Japan's sensitive defense networks, officials say. So in a nutshell, and I'll just give you the brief, you can read the long article if you want, but in a nutshell, back in 2020 or maybe a little bit before then, I think it was 2020, they had found the penetration of the defense network. And it was not just that they got hacked, but China, were taking everything. They had access to everything on the defense network. They were looking for plans, weaknesses, any type of information that may be on that network, from drills to other things, all of it. They had just basically unfettered access to it. It was so bad that the head of the NSA and U.S. Cyber Command both literally left immediately and flew to Tokyo. And then they briefed the defense minister, and then they used them to help alert the prime minister. That's how bad it was. Like, our guys jumped on a plane and went immediately there, and were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you've been hacked this bad. So while that happened, and now mind you, this article, especially because it's coming from WAPO, is going to have a little bit of a political spin, and I'm going to leave that out because I don't want to get into the politics of the prior or the existing, and whether or not they were, they failed to do their jobs or didn't. That's for the author. But the fact that this happened, but then after that, since it's happened, it didn't even get cleaned up completely. It is still, to this day, they say there's still access, and there's still backdoors and problems with that hack. It still exists. They have not fully cleaned it up. So what is caused for the U.S. is when you think about how we work with Japan, an ally, from a defense standpoint, if we want to send them information, we want to share things with them, we're much more leery of doing that because we know that their defense network still has this vulnerability. So this is causing a bit of a problem when it comes to the relationship we have with Japan, and the fact that, according to this article, these hacks are still in place. Not fully. They did fix some of them, but enough that it still warrants the fact that the U.S. Department of Defense is leery about even sharing stuff with them. So that's kind of crazy if you think about it. It was probably a really big deal in 2020 and 2021, but it was never released. Nobody knew about it. This was not talked about. It was not presented. And now they're telling us about this historical one. I'm sure they've got their political spin on it too, but set that aside. Just thinking about the concerns about having your entire defense network literally just being opened up to China, and they're literally pulling and scraping and downloading and taking any and everything they want. That's a scary thought when you think about your adversaries, if they had access to your network. And of course, we ally with them. So what have we shared with them that could have been vulnerable? Those are some of the important questions that I know a lot of people are asking, a lot of people are concerned about. So speaking of hacks, I want to talk briefly about this other one. This was the North Korean hackers. So again, another piece of news. It happened. This was last year, I believe it was. Yeah. So, but the interesting thing about this, again, we're just being told about it today, is this is North Korea hacking Russia. Would you even think that as allies that they would do that? Well, yes, they did, and they do. And they've been hacking this Russian missile maker. So again, they're cyber espionage teams that were linked to the NK government, with security researchers called Scarcroft and Lazarus, secretly installed stealthy digital backdoors into a system at NPO Mashintrovinia, a rocket design bureau based in Rutov, a small town in the outskirts of Moscow. So when we think about all the advancements and the quick innovation that has come out of North Korea towards their missiles, their ICBMs, their nuclear capabilities, their EMP capabilities, their satellite and other capabilities, it's very likely that a lot of that has actually been stolen, if not given to them. Or maybe they knew they were stealing it, and this was just a way to give them plausible deniability to say, hey, we Russia gave it to NK, but we didn't actually give it to them. They stole it from us. So now we can say we didn't do it. So that's more than likely, in my mind, that might be a very logical case for this, is that they were allowed to. But nonetheless, this is being reported, and it's come out that they've actually been hacking this particular rocket outfit manufacturer in Russia, and gaining and stealing information from them that would help their own tasks with building it. So tell me what you think. Do you think they do it just because they're unscrupulous and will attack anybody and everybody? Allies be damned, I'm going after you. Or do you think this is just a way of covering up and giving Russia plausible deniability, and they just allowed them to hack it so that they could get the information, but they didn't actually hand it over to them? Now, it's also interesting is that this is happening right after the Sergei Shoigu made a surprise visit to NK, and he went there, asking for them to amp up their arms and other types of equipment that they have that they can sell and give to Russia. So that was the impetus of the meeting, but it was also a surprise. At least it was private in the sense it wasn't pre-announced, and everybody wondered why this strange Russian aircraft had flown over to North Korea. And then later it's being reported that Sergei Shoigu had met with Kim and with NK leadership for that. So all of this is happening at the same time. Makes you question it. It's certainly interesting for sure. NK's always, got something going on. Speaking of which, I'll just add this to it real quick. Kim Jong-un did tell, and this is coming out yesterday, this weekend, that he did tell his arms factories, to boost capacity. So maybe it's because the Shoigu meeting. Maybe there's something else going on here, but he has now gone to his factories that are making missile engines, artilleries, and other weapons to boost capacity as an important part of bolstering their defense, is what the state media is saying. I don't know if it's their defense as much as maybe let's ship some of this stuff over and make some more money to Russia so we can do other things. But we'll see. I'm certain that we're going to see in the coming weeks and months, we're going to start to hear about more and more munition and equipment coming from North Korea over to Russia, which is not allowed. I think the sanctions on there are going to should prevent that. So if it's happening, it'll probably be done covertly in many different or in other ways that they can skirt around, whatever loopholes they've got. So speaking of NK, speaking of Russia, speaking of everybody that has the capability of actually striking us with an EMP, I want to remind you about EMP Shield, one of our affiliate partners. We actually make a commission off of the sales of these. If you want to learn more about an EMP Shield or how to protect yourself from an EMP, go to marfooglenews.com/EMP. You can learn all about it. Best of all, you can save $50 on each device you purchase, and it stacks on top of whatever discount, which they're currently running a promotion right now. So make sure you get that if you can while they run it, because you get to double stack those discounts and they stack up together. An EMP is an electromagnetic pulse. It would happen when a nuke is discharged way up in the upper atmosphere, and it causes this ionization to happen in an induction into all of our copper wire, mostly, like that's in your house or in your car. And that massive surge of energy causes things to break and freak out and not work and get burnt up. having something like an EMP shield, which is a super fast capability to shunt that power, is immensely valuable in the sense that you can save your medical device that's running in your house that you know, like a CPAP machine that you need to sleep with and after the power gets hit, so that your wife or significant other or loved one who's driving the car home from the grocery store has a chance to even make it home when an EMP happens. I know everyone says, you won't have a car. You'll be the only car driving out there, so they're going to come after you. Well, yeah, that's true. Like an hour, 2 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours later, when everybody realizes what's set in. But what's the value to you in that short amount of time when it happens? You know, can you crank your car up and finish getting home, even if you have to weave around other dead cars? I think the answer is absolutely. I know it is for me. That's why I bought one and put it on my wife's car, because I wanted her to get home. That's the most important thing. And then we can go where we're going to go from there. Look, they have protection for your house, your vehicles, even small vehicles with the micro, if you want to put it into a side-by-side, a motorcycle, things that don't have a lot of room to fit them in, your solar systems, your bug out location, your ham radios, anything that is susceptible to an EMP blast or a coronal mass ejection or even a lightning strike. Lightning is just as powerful. It just happens one time in one spot. But if it happens, this will protect it. This is the device to get. So go check it out. Learn more at marfooglenews.com/EMP. All right, let's keep going. We talked about the hackers. We talked about the factories. Let's talk about this explosion that happened in Turkey. If you did not hear about this, it's kind of interesting, and I'm suspect on the timing of this. So certainly this is terrifying for the people there. It kind of reminds me of what happened in Beirut when that explosion went off. But this one wasn't as big, but still huge. If you look at the smoke in the background on this picture, I think there is a better picture. Well, that's probably an early shot right when it was happening or afterwards with the fire. But there's some other pictures that sort of show the immense height of this cloud that came out of this right on the port town. And this happened at the grain facility. So these were the grain silos that in Turkey, and they called it an earthquake-like explosion. It ripped through a port 55 miles east of Istanbul. Now, thankfully, as it's reported at this time, only 12 people were injured. Nobody has perished from it, but it was a massive explosion. Now, let's stop right here. This is what I'm thinking, and the reason why I think it's so suspect is the timing of this. As you know, we just came out of the NATO meeting where Turkey was allowing others, allowed Finland to join and put up their, stipulations for why they would allow Sweden to join. And you got to understand that at the same time, they are also not an ally, but a close friend. They play both sides. Like they go talk to Russia all the time. They meet with them. They are friendly with them, but they're also a NATO member. They were also somebody who was very much interested in the Black Sea grain deal. Well, that we know Putin canceled. He canceled that about 2 weeks ago and said, we're not doing it anymore. And so that caused that's the grain that would come out of UKR through the ports there and then be distributed to others. China buys it. Turkey certainly buys a lot of it. So why all of a sudden are their grain silos destroyed? Right after that's happening, right after they were doing stuff with NATO, but we're probably going to find something else out here. Something funny's going on, and that's why this is important to think about. We'll see if they brush this under the rug and give just some simple excuse, or if we actually start to hear from them because this is fresh. We won't even know what caused it for a few days or maybe even weeks. If you remember how long it took for us to be told what happened in Beirut, that was a long time. So let's see what comes from this. But I'm very suspect that this is very likely something that could have happened because of their relationships or playing both sides of the relationships, and they upset one side. And I think we know which side they probably upset, especially since we saw Putin shut down the grain deal. I'm not saying he did it, but something's going on here. It's just the timing is too coincidental with everything that sort of happened in the last 3 to 4 weeks, and then boom, this goes off. So you tell me, what do you think? Do you think this has anything to do with it? Do you think it's just coincidence? And, I don't know, they had the grain stored the wrong way and it built up too much, gas of some sort and caused an explosion? I don't know. You tell me what you think in the comments down below and let us know. Moving along to UKR and talking about specifically what's going on there. This is kind of interesting, and also very Ganda-ish. So I want to, again, remind everybody when we talk about stuff coming out of this conflict in Europe between Russia and UKR, when you get statements from either side, they're always spun in their narrative. So again, take that for what it's worth. But UKR is saying that they have detained a person who was actually helping plot the zip of Zelensky. And specifically, the woman was sharing the intelligence with Russia and helping them create an airstrike in a certain area where the president would be at. So that was I think it was in visit the southern region of Mykolaiv. I'm sure I'm butchering that name too. But that's what they said. So there's not a lot to the story other than they've detained the person. Which then in turn tells us that they are claiming there was this attempt being made. And now we'll probably learn more, but we're only going to learn what UKR is going to tell us. I don't think we'll hear much in the way of any statement from Russia on this, especially in any detail. If they say anything, I think it would be very thin. Just like this is very thin, but kind of interesting. So the woman says, quote unquote, was preparing an enemy airstrike on Mykolaiv region during Zelensky's recent visit. So interesting. We'll see. Obviously, they're all targets, especially in the heat of this conflict. So speaking of Russia, I want to talk a little bit about this. So they have, and I don't know why this is so important right now, given the fact that they're in the midst of a conflict in UKR that they started and they're trying to claim their land and finish. But at the same time, they've claimed that they're now in a major conflict with the West, that they're worrying about their space race. But apparently they are now making claim that they're going to the moon. And they're going to launch their first lunar lander since 1976. So that's quite a long time ago, if you think about it. I know many of you look at this and say, there's a decent number of people in our audience that don't believe that we've been there, or don't believe you can even go there, or don't believe that anything's around there, pun intended. But anyway, it is interesting. We're talking a little bit about it. So they've got, they're about to launch and will launch its first lunar landing spacecraft in 47 years on Friday. They're obviously racing, as it says, India, who's also going to the south pole of the moon, and they're claiming that's a potential water source. And we talked about the fact that there's potential water source there, and we've talked about some of the different regions of the moon. It certainly seems like everyone is now racing to the moon because, and I think it's more around the commercial aspects. There's definitely a military advantage to that from a space point of view as we get beyond just our low Earth orbit. But I think that what we're going to find is there's a huge economic boom that comes from mining things from the moon. I don't know what's there personally, but I'm sure there's something there that they're going to want, or something there that they can produce. It's close by. It's easier than any other planet, or even asteroid for that matter, to get to back and forth, and be able to do that. So I'm suspecting that that part of what we're seeing is a commercialization. But I think the countries are trying to claim territory so they can claim rights and take those, or at least allocate what they're going to claim to be their own. And it'd be interesting to see if somebody actually goes there and says they're taking the whole moon and nobody else can have it. Then how are they going to defend that? But even if somebody does that, we're going to probably see a conflict go down in that area as it relates to how the areas and the quadrants of the moon, so to speak, are going to be broken up by country, and who's allowed to mine what, who's allowed to build what, who's allowed to develop and do things. So pay attention to it. But it's interesting. This just came out that they're launching Friday, and they're headed to the moon. They got their first spacecraft to land there. So speaking of space, and speaking of EMPs earlier, and CMEs, which are coronal mass ejections, there has been a lot of activity going on with the sun. I do want to give a shout out to Wages World. I got a video from him. He actually was just live earlier. So if you want to get the latest update, he's got a nice long live here. It was about 34 minutes. Go check it out. He goes through all the latest details. But he did give us an update on this potential double hit. And the reason why a double hit, and he'll tell you a little bit about it too, but the reason why a double hit of a solar event is a big deal is the first hit that hits our atmosphere, much like an EMP, it sort of rattles, sort of the magnetosphere. And when you think about it, that when that happens, it then weakens it, and it takes time for it to settle down, recharge, and build up its strength so that it can protect us again. Well, a double hit means the first one comes in, it may not be that big, it may be just a normal CME that you can handle, or we get all the time, a 3 or a 2 or even a 4, it hits. And then another one comes right behind it, and it's the one that's right behind it that hits the weakened protection, the weakened magnetic shield that we have around our Earth. So very fascinating what's happening right now and what potentially could go down. Let's listen to him for just a moment, and then you guys can go check out his long video over on his site, and we'll have it linked in the webpage with the show notes.
Hey guys, Wages World coming at you. Going to give you an update on what's going on here. Hey, we've had two eruptions here on the sun, the X flare and an M flare. They're going to kind of combine into one, and we'll see that in just a second. But as you can see here, guys, there's been 4 bigger flares just in the past few days. Radiation storm, geomagnetic storm. And as we get moving on here, guys, we're going to scroll down, and you're going to see the NOAA model. This NOAA model is showing these 2 bigger eruptions. It just updated a few hours ago. And what you're going to see here, they're going to combine almost into one. Now, these are not direct hits. They're very close to direct hits. Now if this model is off by, just a little bit, we could be getting a bigger geomagnetic storm, or we could be getting hardly anything. But you can see here, look at the density. That black is very high dense material. And as we move on here, this is the SDO. This is the extreme ultraviolet. And I'm giving you guys a few little views here because you can see the atmosphere of the sun, the corona, get disturbed. And you'll see the little puffs and the here and there and everywhere. But look on the right side as we go through this. Now you're going to see that the right side of the sun here is just very active, and it's coming from that same area of the sun that did the X flare and a few of the M flares. But let's not forget, we have the sunspots behind them also. That's the 31 angstrom. That gives us a pretty good view there also. Again, this satellite is just sitting out in front of our planet. It's in geosynchronistic orbit. It stays over the same part of our planet at all times. But it is always looking at the sun. It's like the big eye on Lord of the Rings. Okay? Now, there's some stealth CMEs here on the front also. Can't really see them. So we can't really tell if they actually made it out of the sun's corona. Now, if they did, we could be getting hits that we're not really aware of yet. And that's happened quite a bit, especially during solar maximum. There's so many things going on, sometimes we miss things. And this 94 angstrom here gives us a really good view too. You can see these things just popping everywhere. Now, this is LASCO C2. It's about 1 million miles closer to the sun. If you look on the bottom left there, you will definitely see a graph there, and it's showing you where the satellite's at. But check these eruptions out. Now, I kind of did this. There's 1, 2, 3 eruptions on the 5th into the 6th, okay? And these are the bigger eruptions. There's also some other ones. So come on back for the full update later. God bless. Yahusha saves. And yeah, you could drink this Kool-Aid.
All right, there we go. That was the update from Wages World. And like I said, he did put out a longer live earlier today. So if you want to get that full update as he was talking about in the video, go check it out. Wages World is on our friends list at marfooglenews.com/friends, where you can find everyone else, including our mods. His link is there, and I'll also put it on the show notes link, which will be down below in the description. So, hey, real quick, I do want to shout out a couple folks who sent some super chats to us and super thanks to us from the last show. And I know since this is a premiere, it's not easy for me to see things live, but I usually say thank you live. But I want to say thank you on air for you as well. Ed Brown, who sent a super sticker, thank you so much. And Bible Talk 777 again says, I caught some of the replays. Good job, Dex, and much love, mods and family. Jesus loves you. Remember that. So love him back. Amen. And absolutely, Bible Talk. Much love and amen. And God bless you. And then I want to shout out Stephanie Cook, who left a super thanks and said thanks. And thank you, Stephanie, from the bottom of our heart. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone. And if you want to support the channel and you don't need to, and you can't do it monetarily, that's fine. Hit the share button, hit the like button, do anything that helps spread the word, helps bring people to the community, because you guys are fantastic. You're awesome. And bringing more people together in our chat to our community where we can share and develop and learn from one another, the better we can be. So, all right, well, let's keep going. Let's talk more about what's happening. Get this, Elon Musk was bragging about lifting 45-pound weights and now says he has to get an MRI on his neck and back and may need surgery before his cage match with Zuck. So, of course, one side of the social media is all up in arms saying, hey, he's backing out. He's, he can't fight. He's, wimping out. But we'll see. He did say he was too busy to go to the gym, so he just lugs 45-pound weights around with him, which is much different than what you see Zuck, who is apparently off training all the time. But I question if he's doing that, is he working? But it looks like Elon probably works many more hours than Zuck does if Zuck is spending all of his time training in cage matches. But anyway, if you find this at all interesting, let me know. I know I asked last week who was going to win, and everybody said, I think most people responded with Elon. And I didn't actually tally it up, but it looked quick, and I looked at it quickly. It was, most people said Elon's gonna take him in the cage match, but will it happen? So apparently, Mark Zuckerberg put out a date. He said, "Hey, August 26th, do you want it?" And he has not responded. He did not respond back. The only thing we've seen is this. Him stating, "Hey, the exact date is still in flux. I'm getting an MRI of my neck and upper back tomorrow." And then he said, may require surgery before the fight can happen. We'll know this week. So we're all sitting on pins and needles, I guess, if you want to call it that. Some of us don't care, but some of us do. They find it interesting. And I think it certainly would be an entertaining event. Musk does want to stream it live on X. X is the new name of the Twitter platform. If you haven't heard, they changed the name from Twitter to X, x.com. He does want to stream it live there. And of course, they want to give all the proceeds and money to charity. And specifically, he says a charity for veterans. So that's really nice. That would be great. I think that would be a fantastic way for them to give any of the money they generate from this, because Lord knows they don't need it. They got plenty. So what do you think? Do you think he's really in pain and needs to go have surgery, or is this just his way of stalling and delaying because he's not getting in shape fast enough? What are you reading into this? Tell me down below if it's even at all important to you. If you don't care, that's fine too. I understand. All right, let's talk about some of the other headlines, the stuff that's going on in the rest of the topics. So specifically, I'm talking about overflow. This is on our website. So if you head over to marfooglenews.com and you click on the thumbnail for the show, or you open the show notes link down below in the description, you'll land on this webpage and you can learn more about the rest of the story, what's happening. So there's an interesting article about the laptop. You know which laptop I'm talking about, the one that it belongs to the son of the current president, and what Jim Jordan is talking about with the FBI. So that came out. If you want to see that, very interesting updates on that. Of course, we have the latest, and the way they're spinning the T-Man debacle is they're saying that he really wants to go and get locked up. Which that doesn't make much sense to me, but that's the kind of rhetoric that they're putting out. If you want to see, we've got we've got some of the stuff about the judge. We got some of the stuff that what one of the judges was doing that was actually in I guess you could say sort of in favor of T-Man. And then, of course, you've got all the other nonsense about, his raging on Pence and all of that. It's all here. This is the political stuff. We don't normally cover these, and that's why we put it on the website so you can find out about it. And if it's important to you, you can look into it. We try to give you both sides of it, the pro and the con on it. So I mentioned earlier about Sergei Shoigu's trip to North Korea. So the details of that, if you want to learn more about it, I gave you the gist, and the gist is he went there and asked for more arms. But if you want to understand like why everybody kind of was looking at the flight, checking the flight, why did this flight go to Russia? It hasn't been there, went from Russia to NK, had never gone there since 2019. There was a whole lot of mystery around it. That is documented right here. It's an interesting article. So if you'd like to read more about it, you can find out about it. We do have some of the Ganda-ish pieces. I know I gave you a couple earlier, but the more Ganda-ish pieces about what's going on, such as Russia's Air Force is barely able to leave its own airspace because the UK defenses are so strong. Rah, 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 they say, right? That's coming from the UK intel. Ganda piece number 2 Ganda mouthpiece number 2. But anyway, certainly I would like to think that their defenses are strong because it's our equipment they're using. It's the Patriots and it's other stuff. And I'd like to think that our equipment is really that good. And it quite possibly could be. I'm certain that it's pieces like this, though, that are very much, put out there with an obvious side to it. So, well, I'll leave it at that. Zelensky says that UKR is making progress with the Patriots and the IRST defenses, which goes hand in hand with that UK's assessment, which says that Russia won't even come into the country. Apparently, there was a peace agreement that was thrown out, but it was rejected. Again, they're always rejected because I don't think they want peace there. I think this is actually an event that they want to continue because it's generating a lot of cash flow for these companies that are making all of this equipment that's getting just eaten up in these events. That's one part of it for sure. UKR is evacuating its soldiers by loading them on drones. That's kind of an interesting. We haven't seen that they're calling it a battlefield first. So if you'd like to learn more about that, you can. They also said there was at one point a little bit of contention. There's this, I reported last show, I talked about how there's this idea that there may be a Fantastic Freddy type event being created on the border of Belarus. So Belarus is the hot topic, whether it's the hot topic with Poland because of what's happened with Wagner, the Wagnerites and everything that's been being put up against the Polish border, but also the UKR border. And so some missiles had come in and they actually thought that they were coming from Belarus, but they're now saying that, and they being UKR is saying, it looks like they actually launched from Russia and just traveled through Belarus to get there. So, any chance they get to point a finger at somebody, they're going to, but apparently this one got pointed around where it originally came from. So, and then this is definitely a Ganda piece. I was going to talk about it, but then there really wasn't a lot here because it is just this statement. They're saying that the Russians are attacking the Zaporizhzhia Oblast area with projectiles loaded with chemical substances. Now, this would be a huge violation, and that's what they're saying. It's a violation. And, we've seen this type of rhetoric in other events, especially in Syria and other locations where there was claims made. And of course, both sides point fingers and say, it wasn't us. You made it look like us, or we didn't do that. And then the other side says, no, you did do it. We saw you do it. So it's a big he said, she said. At this point, this is definitely one of those areas that they want to put stuff out. We have seen, obviously, the ICC put out an arrest warrant for Putin over war crimes and other things that would coincide with this type of stuff. So we're going to always, in my opinion, see this kind of information being surfaced up. It really, what comes down to it is, just having a statement about it is not that important as much as having actual credible evidence. And even then, it's hard to know what's really credible when it's coming from these locations because they have a tight wrap on what is allowed to come out and what's allowed to be produced, and hence the word produced. They might be producing this. So anyway, I'm not saying that it's true. I ain't saying that it's false, but I'm saying I'd rather judge it when it's more than just somebody saying it. So, smart cities. There's an interesting article talking about Dallas and trying to call it a smart city and saying that it's now doing well. And actually, the Dallas-Fort Worth area has been growing quite a bit. And I think a lot of people that were heading into Texas have gone to many cities, but that Dallas-Fort Worth has been doing something right because it's been growing quite a bit, at least by some of the numbers they've talked about. But if you want to look more about this whole notion of a smart city and what Dallas has been doing to model some of their things, it's there. I know a lot of people don't necessarily like the idea of a smart city, and I understand that too. So, hey, the glacier in Juneau is actually causing flooding because of the melt on it. It's significant. So the Mendenhall River banks, and I don't know, and I don't live there. So for anybody that does live there, does this happen often? Because it's made it into our headline news. It's made it here. I only wonder if it's just getting wrapped up because it's part of the whole narrative that's going on around change, or is this really a rare thing that the amount of melt that's happening and flooding in Juneau is not normal? You tell me. But if you want to know more, you can come read the article. They're saying that there's a new species of humans. You know how they look back at all the human homonyms and of species, and they're trying to identify this one, and it's a child's skull, and it doesn't match up to anything. So they're actually saying they need to make a new fork in the history that we have. So if you want to believe it or want to learn more about it, go take a look and see what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And then, of course, I've talked about WorldCoin quite a bit over the last week. Now the Kenyan police have raided the warehouse that the WorldCoin was using, and they confiscated their documents and machines. So, a lot of people are skeptical about what's going on with WorldCoin, specifically and the iris scanning that they're doing. So if you don't know about WorldCoin was putting out a system that allowed them to create a digital identity for every human on Earth, but be able to know each human was unique. And they were doing it by trying to get everybody to scan their eyeballs. And in places like Kenya and others, they were paying top dollar to get these people, almost exploitative in some opinions, saying, hey, $50 of crypto, or in some cases even giving other tchotchkes and valuable things away in addition to that, if they would just walk up and scan their eyes and help build that database. But everybody's questioning what is really happening with that database and what's really happening with that data, and how safe is it, and how long are they going to store it, and can it actually be matched up to people later, and what implications does that have? And just setting aside the whole notion that having this identity system also causes problems when you think about, okay, well, if everything's tied to this identity system, and then governments and world rulers want to attach to it and start to say, I want to turn that identity off, or I want to deny access to these identities because of the things that they performed, or the actions they've done, or the arrest records that they have, that causes all sorts of consternation, in my opinion, about this whole notion of having a global identity. But anyway, you tell me what you think. Obviously, the Kenyan police are at least getting their hands dirty on this one, and they'll see what they can dig up, if anything. All right, that is what's going on over on marfooglenews.com. I've given you the headlines of all the main stuff. I've given you the highlights of what's over there if you want to go check it out. Please, 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 make sure to go check out our other affiliates. I'm just going to hit them real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but marfooglenews.com/energy, the best solar generator. I just got done weathering the storms here. I don't know, a lot of you folks watching this right now may be going through these massive storms that we're hitting across the southeast up through the east coast. And it was pretty scary. And we actually lost power for a little bit. And the first thing I did was I grabbed my Flex 1500. I'm like, this is great. I'm going to use it. Look, honey, I got power. And I'm Superman now, so I got the power. But anyway, these are great if you lose power. These are great if even in a SHTF situation, or if you go camping, or you want to take power tools out in the far end of the property, you don't have electricity there. There's lots of uses for a solar generator. Plus, it's solar. You can put a panel on it and charge it up, so you don't have to pay for the energy you're using. Check it out, marfooglenews.com/energy. And I also want to remind you to check out marfooglenews.com/prep. So if you're looking for prep food or any other things like iodine pills, water filtration, all you got to do is click on marfooglenews.com/prep. It'll take you to this page and you will see 25% off on a 3-month supply. And if that's the special for the Foogle fam, as well as if you're looking for the rest of it, just click on the My Patriot Supply logo at the top. It'll take you to their full store where you can find the water filtration systems. You can find survival gear and everything else. All right. Thank you guys. A big shout out to the mods. If you want to put an M in chat for the mods, it would be so appreciative. I would love you for it. Bones, Chance Paladin, CJ Blaze, Jammer1, Lisa R. Hall, Rip Curl Readiness, RJL Harris, Ilea, Trinity, Red or Blue Pill, High Road Kermit the Frog here, and Wages World. All fantastic in and among themselves. They've got different, some of them have YouTube channels, some of them have Twitter accounts, some of them have art stores. Go check them out. They're all there on marfooglenews.com/friends. You can also find our other creators that we are friendly with and love and want to share their information. So they're all right here on marfooglenews.com/friends. Folks, I really appreciate you being with me tonight. I'm sorry that I misled you and said Adam would be back. I really thought it was Monday and I just had the date off. It's tomorrow. So he will be back, I promise. If you liked me filling in, let me know. Leave a comment down below. Hit that like button. I need the likes. That's what I'm trying to get. I kept telling Adam, I'm going to get as many likes as I can, see if I can pull it off. But I do appreciate you guys spending your time with me. I hope you found this valuable. I will be back, and if we have more updates, we'll be pumping them out. Of course, I'll be back on the main show when Adam's back, and that will be exciting and fun. And hopefully lots of new things are coming as well, because we got a lot of cool new ideas we're working on. So that said, I guess I'm out of here. I'm going to give you my version of the outro music. It's not me, it's Adam, but here we go. And Dex out. Much love, everybody.
Welcome to Marfoogle News. Welcome to Marfoogle fam. Welcome to Marfoogle News. Welcome to Marfoogle.